Veronica Ashford stood at the window of the 32nd floor, her hands wrapped around a coffee mug that had gone cold 20 minutes ago, watching the city below move the way it always did, indifferent, relentless, unbothered by the fact that her life was about to be dismantled in the next conference room down the hall. She had known this was coming. That was the part no one would understand later. She had known for 4 months. Her husband of 7 years, Mitchell Ashford, sat at the head of the long oak table when she walked in. He had his jacket on, the charcoal one she had picked out for his 40th birthday, and he was wearing the expression he reserved for difficult vendor negotiations, controlled, dismissive, as if she were a line item on a budget he was preparing to cut. The rest of the board was there, 7 people she had known for years. Some looked at the table. One, Howard Greaves, the company's outside counsel, looked directly at her with an apology already written across his face. Mitchell didn't stand. "We've been reviewing your role," he said, "and the board has agreed that Ashford Culinary Group needs new leadership in the brand development division. Your position is being eliminated, effective today." Veronica set her mug down on the credenza near the door. She had practiced this moment in her bathroom mirror at 6 in the morning. She had told herself, "Don't flinch, don't give him the reaction he's expecting." "On whose recommendation?" she asked. Mitchell slid a folder across the table. "It's been a unanimous decision. You'll receive a standard severance package. 2 weeks per year of service. HR has the paperwork." She didn't open the folder. She didn't need to. She had found drafts of these documents on his laptop 3 months ago, late on a Tuesday night when he thought she was asleep, and she was standing in his home office in her socks, staring at the screen with her heart hammering and her hands perfectly still. "This is irregular," said Howard, and his voice was careful. "Veronica built the brand division from a single regional account to 47 markets. I want that noted." "Your concern is noted," Mitchell said, the same flat tone he used when he wanted to end a discussion without technically closing it. He looked at Veronica then, really looked at her, the way he hadn't in a long time. "Do you have anything you'd like to say?" She thought about everything she could say. She thought about the woman she had seen him with at the Raleigh airport, the one who had touched his sleeve in the way you only touch someone you know completely. She thought about the credit card statements forwarded quietly to her attorney's office. She thought about the conversation she'd had in February with her mother's estate lawyer, the one that had changed everything. "No," Veronica said, "I think you've been thorough." Something moved across Mitchell's face. It was fast and it was gone before she could name it, but she saw it. "Security will help you with your belongings," he said. "You have until end of business." Veronica nodded once. She picked up her mug, walked out of the conference room, and didn't look back. Her desk was already mostly cleared. She had been quietly moving things for 6 weeks. The framed photo of her and her mother at graduation was already at her sister's apartment. Her notes, her contacts, her files, anything that mattered had been transferred to her personal cloud the month before, in pieces on lunch breaks, in the ordinary way of someone who had learned to be very, very patient. She placed a few things in a box for the optics of it. A plant she didn't care about. A coffee mug from a conference in Nashville. A calendar still showing March. Ronnie. She turned. It was Dessa Okafor, her assistant of 4 years, standing near the printer with her arms crossed and her eyes red at the edges. "Tell me this isn't happening." "It's happening," Veronica said. "But it's going to be okay." She meant it. That was the strange part. She absolutely meant it. The elevator doors opened on the lobby and Veronica walked out into the Atlanta afternoon with her cardboard box and her cold coffee and the knowledge that Mitchell Ashford had just made the worst miscalculation of his life. He didn't know about the trust. That was the thing. In 7 years of marriage, in 6 years of building her mother's legacy into something that employed 300 people, Mitchell had never fully read the estate documents. He had skimmed them at the closing. He had asked 2 questions, both about the real estate holdings, and then he had signed where his name was indicated, and assumed he understood what he owned. He didn't. When Veronica's mother, Claudine Renee Marchand, had died 4 years ago after a long illness, she had left behind more than a culinary empire built from a single Creole restaurant in Savannah. She had left behind a structure, a carefully engineered legal architecture designed by a woman who had survived her own bad marriage and swore her daughter would never be vulnerable the same way. Claudine had not trusted Mitchell Ashford. She had said so exactly once at Christmas dinner 3 years before she got sick. She had pulled Veronica aside in the kitchen, while the men were watching football in the next room and said, "That man loves what you bring him, baby. I'm not sure he loves you." Veronica had defended him. Of course she had. She was 32 and in love, and her mother had a habit of seeing the worst in people before they'd earned it. But Claudine had gone to her attorney anyway. She had restructured her estate with conditions that looked, on paper, like standard protective language for a family business transfer. In reality, they were a loaded gun pointed at anyone who tried to push her daughter out of what was rightfully hers. The Marchon Trust held 62% of Ashford Culinary Group. Veronica's shares, not Mitchell's. Mitchell had been given a 38% stake as a wedding gift, a gesture of good faith from a woman who had hoped she was wrong about him. The trust had one activation clause. If Veronica were ever removed from the company against her will, or if evidence of financial misconduct were documented by the trustee, her shares would convert immediately to voting majority with full executive authority. She had learned this in a meeting with the family attorney, Edmund Ferris, on a gray Thursday in February. She had sat across from him in his wood-paneled office in Savannah with her hands in her lap and said, "Tell me what my mother actually left me." And Edmund had told her. She had cried in her car for 20 minutes afterward. Not from grief, though there was grief in it. She cried because her mother had seen this coming, and had still believed Veronica was strong enough to handle it. The trust wasn't just an asset, it was a letter. It was Claudine Marchand saying, "I saw and I prepared and I believe in you." Then Veronica had dried her face, called her attorney, and started building her case. She had hired a forensic accountant named Sutton, who had spent the previous decade doing investigative work for the SEC before going private. In 8 weeks, Sutton had found what Veronica had suspected. Mitchell had been quietly redirecting vendor rebates into a separate LLC he controlled, one he had opened 18 months into their marriage. Over 5 years, the total came to just under $1.5 million. It was precise methodical theft from a family company, disguised as normal operating variance. She had also hired a private investigator. She had not wanted to. It felt like something people did in movies, dramatic and humiliating. But Edmund had told her that documentation of personal misconduct would support a hostile removal claim under the trust terms, and so she had made the call. The investigator, a quiet woman named Arden who wore no-nonsense shoes and spoke in declarative sentences, had delivered her report in March. Mitchell had been involved with a woman named Celeste, a hospitality consultant who did contract work in the Southeast. The relationship appeared to have begun 2 years ago. There were hotel receipts, calendar entries, restaurant reservations under alternate contact names. Arden laid it all out in a binder with numbered tabs. Veronica had sat with that binder for a long time before she could read the whole thing. She had gone to her best friend's house that night. Philippa Osei had been her closest friend since college, a woman with a sharp tongue and a generous heart who made very good bourbon cocktails and never pushed Veronica to talk before she was ready. "He's been stealing from your mother's company," Veronica said when she finally put words to it, "and he's been with someone else for 2 years. Philippa set down her glass. "Tell me what you need. I need 6 more weeks. I need him to think everything is fine. I need him to feel so confident that he makes a move, and then I need to be ready." 6 weeks, Philippa said. "Okay, I can do 6 weeks. Those 6 weeks were the hardest thing Veronica had ever done. She had gone home every night to the house they shared in Buckhead, and made dinner and watched television, and answered his questions about her day, with the practiced calm of someone who had learned, finally, that the most powerful thing you can be when someone is underestimating you is still. She had felt, more than once, like she was standing on the edge of a cliff with the wind pulling at her. She wanted to confront him. She wanted to throw the binder across the kitchen and watch his face when he understood what she knew. But she waited. She kept building. She added to the file every week, and she waited for Mitchell to make his move. He made it on a Tuesday in May. Now sitting in her car in the parking structure beneath the building, Veronica called Edmund Ferris. "He did it," she said when he answered. "Then we move." Edmund's voice was calm and precise, the way it always was. "I'll file the trust conversion documents with the board tonight. The emergency meeting is set for tomorrow morning at 8. Mitchell will receive formal notice before 9 this evening. Sutton has already delivered the forensic report to the district attorney's office. They've been expecting it. And the divorce? Your attorney has the papers ready to file the moment you give the word." Veronica leaned her head back against the headrest and closed her eyes for a moment. 7 years. She had given this man 7 years of her life, and all of her mother's trust, and more loyalty than he had ever deserved. "Do it," she said. "All of it." She drove to Philippa's apartment in Midtown and stood in the doorway until her friend pulled her inside without a word. They sat on the kitchen floor with their backs against the cabinets, because neither of them felt like sitting properly, and Philippa poured wine and Veronica told her everything about the day. The way Mitchell had looked at her across the table, the apology in Howard's eyes, the cardboard box, the elevator. "Tomorrow," Philippa said. "Tomorrow he finds out." "I know, are you scared?" Veronica thought about it honestly. "I'm tired," she said. "I've been carrying this for 4 months and I'm just really tired." Her phone buzzed on the counter. A text from Mitchell. "Hope the transition is smooth. Nothing personal, Ronnie. This is just business." She showed it to Philippa without a word. Nothing personal, Philippa repeated, and the way she said it made the words sound exactly like what they were. He fired you from your dead mother's company, in front of the board, with a folder he obviously prepared. And it's not personal. Don't respond, Veronica said before Philippa could reach for the phone. I wasn't going to respond, I was going to throw it into the street. Veronica laughed. It surprised her, the laugh. Sudden and real, the kind that comes loose when you've been holding tension in your chest for too long. She slept on Philippa's couch that night, for the first time since 23 and broke and sharing an apartment with no air conditioning. She woke up at 5 and lay there in the gray morning light, listening to the city starting up outside. She thought about her mother. Claudine Renée Marchand had built her restaurant from nothing. She had opened it at 31 with borrowed money and a recipe book she'd inherited from her grandmother. And she had watched it fail twice before it succeeded. And she had never once stopped believing it would. By the time she died, the Marchand name was on 17 restaurant concepts across 9 states, a catering division, a hospitality training program, and a licensing deal with a grocery chain that Veronica had negotiated herself. She had not built any of that so someone else could take it. Veronica got dressed at 6. She put on the navy suit she had bought specifically for this day. She did her hair the way her mother used to say made her look like she meant business. Then she drove back downtown. The security guard at the front desk looked confused when she walked in. Mrs. Ashford. He stopped himself. I'm not sure your credentials are active. Check your system, Veronica said. There should be updated instructions from overnight. He typed. His eyes moved across the screen. Something shifted in his posture. Of course, go right ahead. She took the elevator to 32. The office was still quiet. It was 7:50, but the board members were already gathering in the main conference room. Edmund was there, along with the 5 independent board members who had received emergency notice the night before. Howard Greaves was there too, still wearing the same apology he'd had on yesterday, but with something else added to it now, something that looked like relief. Veronica walked into the conference room and sat at the head of the table. At 8:03, Mitchell Ashford walked out of the elevator and saw through the glass wall that something was wrong. Veronica watched him register it. The board assembled, the room prepared and her, sitting where he always sat. He came through the door with his chin up. What is this? He said. I didn't authorize a board meeting. I did, Veronica said. He looked at her the way he had the day before, controlled, dismissive. You don't have the authority. Edmund rose. Actually, Mr. Ashford, she does. Effective last night at 9:14 p.m., the Marchand Family Trust Conversion Clause was formally activated. Veronica Marchand Ashford now holds a 62% voting majority in Ashford Culinary Group. She has full executive authority. The blood left Mitchell's face. That's not, he stopped. Started again. The trust was dormant. The shares were in my name jointly. They were never in your name jointly, Edmund said, with the patience of a man who had been waiting to say this for years. Claudine Marchand structured the trust specifically so that her daughter would always hold control. You were provided a 38% stake as a good faith gift. The documentation was available at closing. You signed the acknowledgement yourself. Mitchell looked at Veronica. She looked back at him. You knew, he said. His voice had changed. Yesterday when for 4 months, she said. He sat down. She hadn't expected that. The way his body just stopped holding him up. The way he lowered himself into the nearest chair like the strings had been cut. I'd like to begin, Veronica said, turning to the board. She opened the folder in front of her and began distributing copies. The forensic accounting report, bank records, LLC filings, wire transfer documentation, the investigator's report, personal section excluded. She would keep that for the divorce proceedings. This is a summary of financial misconduct occurring over a 5-year period, she said. A total of approximately $1.4 million redirected from company accounts into a separately controlled entity. I've provided the full report to the district attorney's office. They are pursuing charges. The room was silent in the way that happens when people are trying to determine if what they're hearing is real. I'm calling for an immediate vote, Veronica said, to remove Mitchell Ashford as CEO of Ashford Culinary Group effective now. She looked around the table. Every hand went up. Howard's went up slowly, but it went up. The motion passes, Edmund said. Mitchell looked at the table in front of him. He wasn't looking at anything really. Veronica had the sense that he was somewhere far away, trying to find the moment where it had gone wrong, and realizing it had gone wrong long before he thought. Mitchell, she said, and her voice was even, not unkind, but firm in the way her mother's had been when Claudine meant something. You'll need to vacate your office by end of business. Turn in your access credentials and company devices. Security will assist you. He looked at her. Veronica, there's nothing to discuss right now. Everything will go through counsel. He stood. He walked to the door. He paused with his hand on the frame and she thought he was going to say something, but he didn't, he just left. Through the glass walls, she watched him walk across the office floor. People stopped typing. Conversations died. He kept his eyes forward, his pace steady, but she could see from the way he carried his shoulders that something fundamental had collapsed. She turned back to the board. "We have work to do," she said. The next 3 weeks moved fast and slow at the same time. The criminal investigation opened formally. Sutton Gray was interviewed twice by prosecutors and described as the most prepared witness they'd encountered in a white-collar case in recent memory. Mitchell's attorney began calling Edmund almost immediately, trying to negotiate before charges were formally filed. The divorce was straightforward in the way that divorces built on prenuptial agreements and documented misconduct tend to be. Veronica's attorney, a woman named Sylvie Chow, who had an office full of dead plants and a record that would have terrified anyone, had called the situation clean with obvious appreciation. "He gets his car, his personal property and a settlement that reflects what he came in with," Sylvie said. "Which wasn't much if you recall. He had charm and good shoes," Veronica said. "Courts don't split those equally." The one moment she hadn't been prepared for came on a Thursday afternoon, 3 weeks after the board meeting, when Mitchell's attorney requested a face-to-face settlement meeting. Veronica agreed. She sat across from him in Sylvie's office, and it was the first time she had seen him since the conference room. He had lost weight already. His eyes were tired. He looked like a man who had not been sleeping well, which she suspected was accurate. "I want to explain," he started. "I don't need an explanation," Veronica said. "I have documentation. I have very good documentation. I know that He pressed his fingers to the bridge of his nose. "I convinced myself it was compensation. That I was doing more than I was getting credit for. That the trust arrangement was unfair. You were given 38% of a company my mother built from nothing. As a wedding gift. I know. You stole from her legacy, I know." His voice cracked on the second word. "I know what I did. I'm not trying to excuse it." "Good," Veronica said. "Then sign the agreement and let's be done." He signed. His attorney looked like he'd expected it to go differently. On the way home that evening, Veronica called Philippa. "It's done," she said. "The settlement's signed. Are you okay?" She thought about it. She was somewhere on the interstate, evening traffic moving around her, the city pink and gold in the side mirror. "Yes," she said. "I think I actually am. Come over, I made that lemon cake you like. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Mitchell was formally charged 6 weeks later. 2 counts of wire fraud, 1 count of embezzlement. His attorney negotiated a plea. He would serve 18 months in federal prison, followed by 4 years of supervised release, and would repay the full amount with interest. His professional licenses were suspended. His name was quietly removed from the Ashford Culinary Group website, from the company's promotional materials, from the wall near the elevator where framed photos of the leadership team had hung for years. Veronica replaced it with a photo of her mother. The company stabilized faster than anyone expected, partly because Veronica had been the one actually running most of it for the past 3 years. And partly because people who work for good companies tend to hold on when leadership changes if they trust what's replacing the thing that's gone. She promoted Dessa Okafor to Director of Brand Communications. She brought in an outside operations lead, a man named Arthur Kite who had spent 20 years turning around mid-size hospitality companies and had exactly the kind of calm, systematic mind the company needed. She also called a company-wide meeting, all 300 employees on a video call, and told them the truth. Not every detail, but the truth. That there had been misconduct, that it had been addressed, that they were moving forward, and that she was committed to making Ashford Culinary Group a place where people wanted to work. The response was more than she expected. Dozens of employees sent notes. Several shared things they had noticed under Mitchell's leadership, small things, patterns of dismissal and exclusion, that they had never felt safe enough to raise. She read every message herself. She had monthly town halls after that, open-door office hours, a proper ethics reporting system that went to an independent third party instead of internal HR. She created a mentorship program for women in the company's management pipeline. She brought in a consultant to audit compensation equity across departments. "Your mother really would be proud," Edmund said at their quarterly meeting in August. "I hope so," Veronica said. "I think about whether I'm honoring what she built, whether the decisions I'm making are the ones she would make. She would make better decisions probably. She always did, but she'd be proud of how you make yours." The Savannah restaurant, the original one, the one Claudine had opened in 1987 with borrowed money and her grandmother's recipes, had been in need of renovation for years. Mitchell had put it off, said it wasn't worth the investment, that the market had moved past it. Veronica authorized the renovation in September. She hired a designer who specialized in historic preservation and a consulting chef who had grown up eating at Claudine's table. The reopening was in January. Veronica flew down and stood in the dining room on a Tuesday night, the walls warm and the kitchen loud and the place smelling exactly the way she remembered from childhood, and she thought, there you are. She had been in therapy for most of the year. Her therapist, Dr. Anna Wren, had once said something that stayed with her. You spent 4 months carrying a secret that would have broken most people. You need to figure out why that was possible for you, so you can use it without being destroyed by it. Veronica had thought about that for a long time. The answer she had come to was, her mother. Not her inheritance, not the trust, not the legal architecture Claudine had built, the actual woman. The one who had said in a kitchen while football played in the other room, that man loves what you bring him, baby. The one who had known and prepared and believed anyway. Veronica had survived because she was Claudine Marchand's daughter, and Claudine Marchand's daughters didn't fall. They planned. About 8 months after the board meeting, a woman named Deirdre contacted her through the company's general inbox. The message was brief. I work in hospitality. I had a situation like yours. I don't know who else to talk to. That call lasted 2 hours. At the end of it, Deirdre said, I didn't know it was possible to fight back. I thought I just had to accept it. You don't, Veronica said. She started getting more messages like that. Women in family businesses. Women married to partners who had gradually eroded their authority. Women who had documentation but no idea what to do with it. Or who had never thought to gather it because no one had told them they were allowed to. She talked to Edmund about it. Then to Philippa, who had opinions about everything and was usually right. The Claudine Marchand Foundation launched the following spring. It provided legal consultations, financial planning resources, and emergency support for women navigating business disputes in family or marital contexts. It partnered with 3 law schools to place pro bono attorneys. It ran workshops in 6 cities in its first year. Veronica spoke at the launch event herself, in front of 200 people in a hotel ballroom in Atlanta. My mother used to say that the most dangerous thing in the world is a woman who knows exactly what she's worth, she said. She spent her whole life trying to make sure I knew mine. This foundation is how I say thank you. She had not been thinking about dating. She had been, truthfully, not thinking about it so hard that it had become a kind of active project. The deliberate not thinking of someone who doesn't trust themselves to think carefully about something yet. So it surprised her when she realized, sometime around October, that she had been looking forward to her Tuesday morning meetings with the company's new strategic advisor in a way that had nothing to do with the agenda. His name was Calvin Ostroff. He had been brought in to help with the Atlanta expansion planning. He was 43, divorced, with a daughter in middle school he clearly loved more than anything else in the world. He was direct, genuinely funny, and had the unusual quality, rarer than people admitted, of actually listening when you talked instead of just waiting for his turn. She noticed it one afternoon when she mentioned something offhand about the Savannah renovation, just a passing detail, and 2 weeks later he asked how the reopening had gone. People don't do that by accident. You're going to tell me you like him, Philippa said, over the phone. I wasn't going to tell you anything. I was calling about the foundation gala. You like him, he has a daughter. Most divorced men have something. A daughter sounds fine. I'm not ready. I didn't say you were ready. I said you like him. Veronica didn't answer, which was its own answer. He asked her to dinner in November. Not a business dinner, he said that explicitly, and she appreciated the clarity. She said yes, which surprised her almost as much as the fact that she wasn't afraid. They had dinner at a small place near Piedmont Park, the kind of restaurant where the lighting is good and the noise level is low enough to actually have a conversation. They talked for 3 hours. He told her about his daughter, whose name was Bia, who had opinions about everything and was usually right. She told him about her mother and the restaurant and what it had meant to rebuild it. You've carried a lot, he said, somewhere in the 3rd hour. So have you. Different things. Yeah, she said. Different things. He walked her to her car. He did not try to kiss her. He just said, I'd like to do this again, and she said, I'd like that too, and that was enough for now. She went home and sat in her kitchen in the quiet and thought that she had not expected to feel this. The possibility of it. The slow, careful reopening of something she had quietly shut down because she had needed it shut down. Mitchell was sentenced in December. 22 months federal facility in Georgia. The courtroom was small and unremarkable, the way these things often are when the drama has already been settled in depositions and plea negotiations. His attorney had argued for the minimum. The judge had noted the breach of trust, the duration of the scheme, the specific targeting of a family estate. Veronica did not submit a victim impact statement this time. She had considered it, and she had decided she didn't have anything she needed to say to him in a courtroom. She had already said everything that mattered in Sylvie's office, across a table with a settlement agreement between them. She was done. She watched the sentencing from a seat in the back of the courtroom with Edmund beside her. When it was over, Mitchell was led out a side door, and she watched him go the same way she had watched him leave the conference room in May, with a kind of detachment that surprised her, a clean, uncomplicated release. He was gone. The chapter was closed. Outside it was cold and bright, the particular sharpness of a December morning in Atlanta that she had always loved. Edmund said something kind. She thanked him and meant it. Then she called Philippa, who said finally, "Now can we talk about the gala, or do you need to feel things for a minute?" "I might need a minute." "Take your time. I'm not going anywhere." The gala for the Claudine Marchand Foundation was in March, a year after the launch. It was held at the Biltmore, which was the kind of choice her mother would have made. Grand, a little theatrical, unapologetically ambitious. 300 guests. A string quartet. A Creole menu prepared by the chef from the Savannah restaurant. Veronica stood at the podium and looked out at the room. At Edmund, gray-haired and formal in his dinner jacket. At Dessa, laughing at something with the woman next to her. At Deirdre, the woman who had sent that first inbox message, who was now serving on the foundation's advisory board. At Philip, who had somehow gotten the best seat in the house and was not apologetic about it. At Calvin, who caught her eye from the back of the room with an expression that was warm and private and entirely his. She thought about her mother. She thought about a kitchen in Buckhead on a Christmas afternoon, the muffled sound of football from the other room, her mother's hand light on her arm, and a sentence that had taken years to fully understand. "That man loves what you bring him, baby. I'm not sure he loves you." Claudine had been right. She had been right, and she had known, and she had prepared, and she had trusted her daughter to be strong enough. She had given Veronica not just the legal protection, but the belief, the specific, documented, legally binding belief that her daughter was worth protecting. "This foundation," Veronica said into the microphone, "exists because my mother refused to let love be used as a reason not to plan. She loved me and she planned anyway. She trusted me and she prepared anyway. She hoped for the best and she documented for the worst." Laughter moved through the room, and it was warm, the kind that comes from recognition. The Claudine Marchand Foundation is for every woman who has ever been told that protecting herself means she doesn't trust enough. You can love someone completely and still know your own worth. You can build something together and still understand what belongs to you. That is not cynicism. That is wisdom. And it was the greatest gift my mother gave me. A year later, Ashford Culinary Group opened its flagship restaurant in Chicago, the largest project the company had ever undertaken. It sat on the ground floor of a mixed-use development in the West Loop, with a dining room that could seat 200 and an open kitchen, designed so guests could watch the team work. The design team had asked Veronica what she wanted the place to feel like. She had thought about it and said, like something that was built to last. The opening night was warm for October, one of those last gift evenings that Chicago sometimes produces before winter sets in. The dining room was full, the kitchen was humming, the reservation wait list had a month-long backlog. Veronica stood in the doorway to the kitchen and watched it run. Watched Arthur move through the floor with his clipboard. Watched Dessa take photos near the bar. Watched Calvin at a table near the window leaning toward Bea, his daughter, who was showing him something on her phone with visible excitement. Bea had started calling her Miss Ronnie about 6 months ago, which had made Philippa unreasonably happy. The evening wound down slowly the way good evenings do. Guests lingered. The kitchen noise shifted from the high pitch of service to the lower register of cleanup. Veronica sat for a while at the bar with Edmund, who had ordered a very old bourbon and was in an unusually sentimental mood. "Your mother would have loved this," he said, looking at the room. "She would have had notes," Veronica said. "Oh, certainly, at least 4. But after the notes she would have loved it." Veronica smiled. She thought about what she had felt, standing in the Savannah restaurant in January, that sense of recognition, of returning to something essential. This felt like that, but forward-facing, not a return, an extension. She had not expected to be here at 38. She had not expected to be running a company her mother had built, in a city where she'd never planned to open, with the life she had rebuilt from a Tuesday in May, when her husband had handed her a folder across a conference table and believed he had ended her story. He had not ended it, he had cracked it open. She had walked out of that building with a cardboard box and a cold cup of coffee and the knowledge of what she was capable of, and she had spent the past 2 years proving it. To the board, to her employees, to the 200 women the foundation had already helped, to herself. Mitchell was 18 months into his sentence. She did not think about him often, and when she did, it was without heat. He was someone who had underestimated her, which turned out to be his defining characteristic and his undoing. That was the thing about being underestimated. It hurt, and then it became the most useful thing anyone had ever done for you. She had learned to love what she was capable of. Not in spite of everything Mitchell had put her through, but forged from it, the way good things sometimes are. She knew her own worth now in a way she hadn't when she was 32 and in love and defending a man her mother had quietly, gently, irrevocably prepared for. Claudine Renée Marchand had known. She had known, and she had built the architecture, and she had trusted her daughter to walk through it when the time came. The best revenge, Veronica had come to understand, wasn't watching someone fall. It was building something so good, so real, so fully and entirely yours, that the person who tried to take it from you becomes a small, distant detail in a story that was always going to be about you.